everyone, and welcome to another episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital, a podcast about video games and the stories they tell. I'm one of your hosts, Caitlin Bailey, and with me I have my co-host, Mark Bigney. Mark, how are you doing?
What is up, Caitlin?
So many things.
Is that how the children talk?
I think so. I have a child, and okay, she's never said that probably, but it's okay. It's probably how they talk. Today, we're going to be talking, as usual, about the things that we're currently playing, and then we're going to follow it up with some gaming opinions on old school funware, our segment that we call GOOF, with a discussion of King Arthur's World on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And then we're going to be talking about our feature game, NieR Automata, and we'll finally be following it all up with shouting out the games that we are looking forward to. So Mark, what have you been playing?
I have been playing God Hand. Now, just as a sort of peek behind the curtain, a sort of behind-the-scenes insight for our dear listeners, we maintain a shared spreadsheet about games that we would like to talk about, both in the context of GOOF and in the context of feature game. And I have had God Hand up on that list forever. Caitlin has refused to display any interest in God Hand, so I have been forced to take matters into my own hand, as it were, no pun intended. And I have been replaying God Hand over the course of the past few months. Now, it's been a few months, not because of my impression of the quality of God Hand. It is one of my perennial favorites from the PS2 era, but mostly because God Hand is really hard. And I've been emulating it across a variety of different devices, but most recently I finished it on my INEO Pocket Ace, which is a marvelous device that I can recommend to no one on the basis that it is grossly overpowered and consequently grossly overpriced, but it has a beautiful 4.5-inch 3:2 ratio screen. I've talked about it before on the show. Anyway, God Hand. So there's this oddball by the name of Shinji Mikami, and he was one of the project leads on the first Resident Evil, as well as Resident Evil 4, which is to say, some of the good ones. Mm-hmm. And he also did The Evil Within, which I haven't played. But one of his non-horror titles was indeed God Hand. He decided to help found a strange little studio called Clover, which was going to publish PS2 games for Capcom. And it is kind of a contraction both of a strange Japanese pun involving the names of the founders, as well as a contraction of creativity lover. And that's why it's called Clover Studios. They did Okami, they did Beautiful Joe, and they did God Hand. So, First of all, the tone of God Hand is deliriously wacky. In point of fact, the game opens up with the exact same text disclaimer that you find in Resident Evil games to this day, which is, this game contains scenes of explicit violence and gore. This is kind of what we call a lie. There's not really explicit gore, and the violence in God Hand isn't really explicit, but this is mostly a joke, because while they display this text, you see the main character kicking someone in the nards, and you hear a bell ding when this happens. So this game contains scenes of ding. Well, so this gives you a sense of humor of God Hand, and I'm going to divide the humor in God Hand into 3 different buckets. There's the stuff that I kind of like, even though it's juvenile, the stuff that I could take or leave, and then there's the stuff that I wish didn't exist in the game, and I'm deeply embarrassed about. All right?
Okay.
So, bucket the first. There is a recurring boss who is a gorilla who engages in pro wrestling moves, but it's revealed that it is, in point of fact, a man in a gorilla suit who refuses to utter noises that gorillas don't make. This is a recurring joke. He shows up, he does things that a gorilla would do. The main character attempts to reason with the individual as a human. The gorilla refuses to break kayfabe. It's a whole recurring thing. It's very well done. There's also poisonous chihuahuas as a recurring motif for no apparent reason whatsoever.
All right.
And then there's the aforementioned ball humor, where the main character, in addition to being able to perform ridiculous martial arts moves, more on later, is occasionally going to hit someone or be hit straight in the mean bean machine, and often with a ding sound effect. As I said at the beginning, this is all juvenile. The fact that I like it doesn't in any way reduce the fact that it is juvenile.
Sure.
Then there's the stuff that I could take or leave that's just not to my taste, but is not necessarily what I would classify as regrettable or particularly embarrassing. There's a lot of dominatrixes with whips. There's a lot of weird references to Alexander the Great, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense in any language, but they're there, and it's part of the game. There's a strangely Elvis-inspired impersonator who speaks with a bad Spanish accent and chomps on cigars. It's a whole scene. The character design is all over the place. And then there's the stuff that I make no apologies for, wish wasn't in the game, and make me vaguely embarrassed to be as enthusiastic about God Hand as I am. So there's some gay panic humor. There's a boss encounter where there's a couple of very stereotypical effeminate men, and thankfully they're not a recurring theme. They're just there for a boss. I think they're even a mid-boss encounter, and then they're gone. Okay, no other references to queer people or homosexuals past that. It is what it is. And then there's a recurring bit where there's this team of knockoff Sentai actors, like Power Rangers, but they're all little people, and they speak in falsetto, and there's a number of jokes at their expense. It is cringeworthy, as I say this in part because I just saw Caitlin cringe, which is the appropriate reaction to some of the things that happen in God Hand. Now, why do I put up all this? Because even the stuff that I like in the plotting of God Hand isn't particularly noteworthy. I mean, there's a plot. Like, there's a God Hand, and there's some things, and things happen. This is a game about punching. Punching and kicking and punching. This is a beat-em-up. This is, I think, without much question, the most successful 3D beat-em-up ever designed. Because there have been a number of attempts, particularly of this era. It was released in 2006. In the PS1, PS2 era, to do the three-dimensional beat-em-up. Without much success. Except for God Hand. Part of why it is so successful and so engaging is that there's well over 100 different moves, and you get to build your own combo strings. You get to program in what various buttons do, and there's a sort of default combo string that you can slot in every attack in that string, and the level of customizability is huge, and I've seen a variety of different kinds of builds. It's not even a question of min-maxing, because it's not so much about stats. It's more about what's the attack pattern that you want, what's the speed you want of various attacks, a couple of other things, what kind of tools do you want to have available in your toolkit. You're going to need a guard break. It is what it is. But past that, you can experiment with all kinds of things, and I've seen very interesting stuff. I tend to resort to the same kind of a series of punches and then very, very damaging kicks for my combo strings with a smattering of other tools. But that helps fuel combat that is very satisfying. As I say, it's extraordinarily difficult. You, as the main character, cannot block. Your enemies can block, but you can't. Instead, what you have is the right stick is how you do evasion. If you tap to the left, you dash to the left, you dash to the right, you dash to the right. If you tap backwards, you do a backflip. Now, you have some iframes during this period, and so timing is very crucial. If you tap up, then what your main character does is head fakes, his ducks. And so you can, if you're good enough, avoid any attack. And possibly, if you're really good, you can just weave through any barrage of blows that an enemy gives you and attack them when they're vulnerable. I am sometimes able to do this. Most of the time, I just do the coward's way out and do a couple of backflips, and that's how I get out of range of attack, wait for them to do their attack string, and then charge in. Which leads to one of my criticisms of the gameplay of God Hand. As great as it is, and as well as it integrates all of these other things, and even a little bit of quick-timey-ish events that is very characteristic of the era, the one thing that you cannot customize at all is what you do while running. While running, you can do 3 different attacks. You start with attacks. You end the game with those same attacks that you do while running. It's a strange oversight. I don't know if they ran out of time or thought that people wouldn't be using them much, but I use them all the time. It's part of my playstyle. And if I'm near the end of the game, and I'm basically saddled with the same tools that I started the game with in that sense, I feel like the game has a bit of a lacuna or absence that is uncharacteristic with and very much contrary to the relentless quality and engaging moment-to-moment gameplay and sense of experimentation that God Hand otherwise encourages. So I kind of regret that. It's also the case that I wish that there was a little bit more grappling built in. There's tons of grappling in God Hand. And God Hand correctly identifies that if you're going to suplex someone, it had best be a German suplex, which is obviously the way to do it. Look, I'm not racist. I don't have national preferences. But if you're going to suplex someone, you start with Germany and then work your way down.
What is a German suplex?
Oh, you're not familiar with what a German suplex is?
I am not, no.
It is also known as the belly-to-back suplex. That is where you are standing behind somebody and you arch your back and you end up dumping them straight on their head.
Okay, so it's a suplex that I imagine when I hear suplex.
Oh, okay. Well, I think one of the underappreciated elements of the John Wick movies is they take seriously the delight of various ways to throw a human being to the ground. And I think there's something genuinely aesthetically beautiful about a well-executed suplex, of which there are many, many, many different kinds.
Nice. Okay.
The German suplex is one of those things that is not exactly an actual combat art and more relegated to video games and wrestling games. In part because when you see the end state of the German suplex, you cannot help but notice that the person executing the suplex also has the back of their head collide with the ground at the same time as their opponent does. And you might wonder, is this a practical application? The answer is no. Very much not. See, the goal, I don't want to break this down, Caitlin, and I'm certainly not an expert in combat, but the goal in executing a combat maneuver is not to injure yourself as much or more than the individual with whom you're engaging in combat. That's pro tip number 1. You can take that straight to the bank. They'll be naming a martial art after me in a few generations, I'm sure.
Amazing.
But anyway, so there is grappling to be had, but one of the core elements that I much appreciate in other beat-em-ups, like Streets of Rage, for example, one of the reasons why Streets of Rage is so good is because the grappling system is really, really well done and slightly more elaborated than what you might find in Final Fight. And so I enjoy beat-em-ups that don't have any grappling at all, but I always view it as a bit of a problem. So those are two areas where I think God Hand could have really benefited from something like a remake or a sequel, like a slightly more robust grappling system, one that you could initiate and control rather than is just a reactive kind of quick-time button event thing, and perhaps a little bit more customization over your running attacks. But other than that, God Hand has aged beautifully. There's very little like it in terms of gameplay. Sadly, there's a lot like it in terms of tone. I mean, a lot of people are trying to do the wacky juvenilia both at the time and since. And sadly, as I've commented before in the context of talking about Persona 5 Royal, gay panic humor is still a well that Japanese game developers are willing to go to. I'm sure some American game designers as well, but less prominent releases that I've been subjected to. And again, I make no apology for that. It's truly unfortunate. And if that's a reason for you not to pick up God Hand and try it at all, I cannot blame you one iota. But if you're a enthusiast of beat-em-ups, and if you're curious about how beat-em-ups can be done well in 3 dimensions, and you really like hard games, I remember one of the launch trailers for God Hand involved the characters doing a dance number while an LED sign behind them proclaimed that God Hand is tough but fair, which is accurate. The game also ends with a delightful dance sequence, by the way. And I haven't even mentioned the music. The music is surfer rock. How's that? How's that for an additional bizarre element to God Hand? No other game is like it, frankly, in terms of a number of elements. So I recommend God Hand as a historical artifact. I also recommend it as a solid beat-em-up. I do not recommend it as a cultural artifact, again, because a lot of the elements of humor are deeply regrettable and ought not to be repeated. But I do replay it every few years. I do fall in love with the combat system again, and it's a marvelous game. God Hand, Clover, 2006 on the PS2.
I am so fascinated that this is Clover Studio because I've played Okami. I love it, and I know that we are going to play Okami next week, which is going to be great.
Spoilers, jeez.
I know, spoilers. And I've heard nothing but good things about Beautiful Joe, which I unfortunately never got around to, despite having owned it for a very long time. It's in good company, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And all 3 of those games are very different.
Well, Beautiful Joe is arguably kind of sort of a beat-em-up-ish, but not really. It's more like an action platformer, I guess. I don't know. I mean, genre distinctions are what they are.
But I also hadn't played it, so...
It's very different tonally. It's weird in its own way. I mean, all 3 of these games are deeply bizarre.
Yeah.
You get a whole bunch of really talented weirdos and tell them to do whatever they feel like making, and you're gonna get stuff like this. The fact that all 3 of those games were very well appreciated is a minor miracle, because sometimes you get these highly talented weirdos in a room, and they come up with something completely impenetrable that nobody likes. Right?
Exactly.
It's like, this is an act of a genius, but I don't want to play it. Whereas all these other games are like, wow, this is what creative control looks when you hand it over to a small group of highly competent, talented people. Beautiful Joe, I kind of like, but I don't really vibe with, and Okami I've got no experience with, so we'll see. I just don't really like dogs that much as protagonists, I gotta say. I'm unlike Caitlin in that sense. So we'll, and most of the people involved in Clover have just been involved in, successful project after successful project. The one thing that seems to follow them, though, is they never seem to keep their jobs for very long. It's weird. They bounce around to a lot of different studios making amazing stuff. Partially because the industry does not reward talent.
Oh, yeah. The industry is broken.
Well, on that cheery conclusion, What have you been playing, Caitlin?
So this was a really busy week again, although this time I was trying to play catch up on some video games the past weeks and some of my own non-podcast video games. But I ended up putting some time into Date Everything. So in Date Everything, you have a degree in customer service, and you get a job at a company called Valdivian, and then you are promptly replaced by AI. But you're in an employment limbo because they're apparently not allowed to fire you, which means clearly this can't be in the United States of America. But you get a package from a mysterious stranger in the mail, and it contains something called the Date Viators. These are glasses that when you wear them, you can activate inanimate objects in your home, and then you can talk to them, and you can become lovers, friends, or rivals. It's very weird.
It's super weird. Just to have a minor insertion here.
Yeah.
So it's telling that you call them inanimate objects because inanimate admits of two different meanings. There's the no, seriously, I mean it.
Yeah.
There's the original meaning and then there's the contemporary meaning. The contemporary meaning is a thing that doesn't move. In the original meaning, it refers to whether or not something has a soul, whether or not it has anima. No, I mean it.
Mm-hmm.
And the what's kind of posited in the because I played the demo a very little bit. In the world of data and everything, it is assumed that every physical object, in a way, it's deeply connected to like monism or various elements of Eastern spirituality. Every object has a soul.
Yeah.
And the Date Viators allow you to talk to that soul. So that credenza, that front door, that whatever, it's inanimate in the sense that it doesn't move, in that it is physically inert, but there's a sapient individual residing inside it that you can access through these magical glasses. I'm sorry for the insertion. Please continue.
No, thank you very much. So every day, you can chat with 5 different items in your house. So as an example, there's Dorian the door. And in fact, there's 18 doors, but there's doors. Amir, the mirror. Rebel, the rubber ducky. Lux, the light. Mikey transaction, the microtransaction. And more. They all have their own personalities. Some of them are charming. Some are infuriating. One of the things that I think links all of them is that their designs are incredible. There's Luna, the game console, and she's got like these compact disc slots in her arms. She's got a power button on her shoulder. She's got like this controller headdress. Dorian, the door, has a necklace of keys. He's got a doorknob on his wrist instead of a wristwatch. And he wears like a home alarm system keypad on his upper arm, like it's a badge. Their clothing is also designed in such a way that like Dorian, for example, wears this like kind of suit coat where the edges of it look like ornamentation that you would see around a door. It's very cool. I think they got so creative with the designs, and I think they just look great. So it's really fun to discover new, they call them this, datables. Everything is a datable, and just see what they look like. All the characters seem to be player sexual. There's also a content-aware feature that triggers with certain characters that might be more spicy or could have potentially triggering content. I've heard that it can be applied inconsistently. I don't know too much about that yet. I assume that it's probably just everybody has different thresholds that will make them deeply uncomfortable, and you probably can't do something that'll work for everybody without being really restrictive. So I'm guessing they just had to pick a place. That's
probably fair. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I don't know all of the characters that this option appears for yet. But anyway, it's very visual novel. You walk around your house. There is no field of view option, unfortunately, but thankfully 90% of Date Everything is conversations that occur in 2D. So it's not like I haven't had any problems with motion sickness, thankfully. And there's also like a reticle right in the middle of the screen that probably helps. But yeah, it's visual novel, and my goal is to make Dorian fall for me, but I have to find all the Dorians first.
Dorian is a smoke show. I will freely concede that. Yeah, so I played the demo. I just didn't find, I don't know, maybe played a half hour to an hour of the thing, I suppose. I didn't really find any characters appealing. Like, they've got this shtick.
Yeah.
And the shtick is that the characters are going to have a silly pun name and are going to have very strong visual elements of whatever it is that they're a manifestation of. And I found that to be too much of a barrier, frankly. Like, you're already...
Sure.
So I was in with... I was willing to, at least on a conceptual level, engage in the necessary dissociation, say, yeah, I'm going to try to get in the pants of my front door. All right? I was there. But then when the dude who represents my front door, or whatever, looks too much like a door, right?
It's like, oh, this isn't doing it for me.
Yeah, it's weird. It's strange. Like, now maybe if they hadn't been with those visual elements, I then would have been like, well, this is just an army of random people, and or maybe then the conceptual hangups would have then reasserted themselves. Now, normally when I'm playing like a BioWare game or any game where I know this is the possibility, I'm immediately on the prowl. It's like, all right,
Yes.
who is going to get my unwanted attentions? All right, and so I thought Date Everything was going to be right up my alley, but I spent, as I say, a little bit of time with it. I'm like, none of these characters. I don't know. I was impressed by the amount of effort, because there's so many characters and they're all visually distinct and they're all voice acted by different actors, which is wild.
I know.
They may end up doing the standard voice actor trick where they expect a voice actor to voice multiple roles, and some actors can do that more successfully than others, that's for certain.
So far, at least, every single dateable I've met has had a different voice actor, I believe. They actually have like this gallery of dateables that you can look through for the ones you've discovered, and you can see who their voice actors are, which is nice. But you saying that about the characters made me think of Hatoful Boyfriend, the one where you can date birds. And in that one, they're more human, right? Like they look pretty normal. They don't look like birds, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know a lot about Hatoful Boyfriend, but strangely enough, Hatoful Boyfriend is the game that walked so Date Everything could run. And
yes.
Date Everything is like, birds, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, date my beer. And it was... I like how this genre is escalating in absurdity.
Yes.
And this, of course, leads to an obvious question. What could possibly come next? Like, is this the apotheosis of ridiculousness? Are we going to try to become more grounded after this?
That's a good question. I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Because once you've dated everything, can you then date everything too? Like, what the hell? Like, just a new house full of knickknacks? I don't know. This could be the end point for this progression. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, one of the conceits, I guess, of Date Everything is that if you leave your house, it's all over. Like, I don't know if the glasses stop working or if somebody comes and grabs them. It ends the game, apparently, if you leave. So date everything in the world, now that you've dated everything in your
open
house.
World version?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Sure, fair enough. So, other than Dorian, any standout characters that appeal to you?
I'm not too sure yet. So far, the next character design that I thought was the coolest was the toaster. Because she has, like, this, like, really coiled, curly hair, but it looks like the coils of a toaster. So they're, like, these red... her design is just super cool. I mean, I'm there for Dorian because he's hot, and I love Ben Starr, the voice actor, so...
Yeah, everyone loves Ben Starr.
Yeah, he is a delight.
I will say that Date Everything won a lot of points for me when it made an elliptical reference to the world's greatest living author, Hugo Award nominee Chuck Tingle.
Yes.
For those of you who know Chuck Tingle's work, you know, and for those who don't know, look him up.
Yeah, I saw that and just, so delighted. It's really funny. So yeah, that's Date Everything.
That is indeed Date Everything. Glad to hear you're enjoying it, Caitlin.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. All right, so now we can move on to our gaming opinions and old school funware segment, aka GOOF, where we're going to be talking about King Arthur's World. Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about King Arthur's World?
King Arthur's World was published by Argonaut Software in 1992. It is a real-time strategy game on the Super Nintendo. And it's kind of got a couple of action elements to it in that you can assume direct control over King Arthur, and he kind of moves around like a hack-and-slash character. But make no mistake, this is not Kunitsugami. Kunitsugami was much, much more of a hack-and-slash game with some real-time strategy elements superleaved on top. King Arthur's World, insofar as it seeks to have a balance, seeks to have the other balance instead. This is primarily about deploying the right units at the right time in order to get where you need to get going, instead of Kunitsugami's more staid approach of, well, you have this time to deploy the things you need, and then night comes and things just happen more or less by themselves, and you're there in the middle of slashing the crap out of things. This follows the eponymous King Arthur. There's kind of a very cartoony, not particularly successful visual style as far as I'm concerned about him going around doing stuff. And mostly, Caitlin, I want to know why you subjected me to this.
Okay, so I don't know. I started it up the other day, and I played through, I don't even know how many tutorial levels. There were so many tutorial levels.
That don't actually teach you anything.
No, they don't. I mean, I came across the wizard one, where you have to, like, figure out how to use your wizards. I definitely still have no idea how to use your wizards, because I think that was the first time I lost during the tutorial level, because I managed to kill Arthur with magic by accident. And, like, they're
is the appropriate response. I read the rule book for this thing.
Okay.
I read the manual.
Okay. I didn't
very
have
carefully.
the manual available. I should have.
When reading the manual, I thought, this seems like a bad control scheme.
Oh my god, yeah.
And so I was very careful to read and reread, because basically all you're doing in King Arthur's world is you're deploying units and sometimes issuing very simple commands to specific units. And in the process, they managed to take the 4-button layout of the Super Nintendo and mangle it into something completely unrecognizable.
Yep.
Such that I could never... Again, I read the manual twice, and I played through several of these levels several times.
Yeah.
I could still not reliably remember something as simple as deploy dude. Because you have to enter the right mode, and then you select the thing with a different button, and then you press one of the buttons to deploy them, but if you press the wrong button, you're going to be booted out and or sent to a different thing, and then you start the process over again. Yeah. It's a borderline triumph how obtuse they made this nonsense.
It is such a mess, and I have no recollection of that whatsoever. I just remember playing and having, like, Flight of the Valkyries music going on in the level and just being like, this is so cool. But that was not my experience in this last week. My experience in this last week was press button, nope, that's not the right character. Okay, do something else. Oh, they just got shot by an arrow by an enemy. Okay, so I guess I have to deploy more. How do I do that again? And it was a mess.
Even setting aside all these control issues with difficulty.
Yes.
Typically, at least in the early levels, I didn't get far enough to comment on what you might call the advanced pro strats.
Yes.
But the way that it works is you have these slingers or archers that are your opponents on high elevation, and they just start shooting things at intervals, whether they've got a target or not. Fine. We're in video games. We know how enemies act. They shoot at the sky all the time. It's what they do. It's what enemies do. It's what they learn at enemy school. It's how they've been trained. And when you're controlling King Arthur, that's kind of okay, because you can get him close to where the arrow lands, wait, tell him to wait, and not back home, Arthur, stop.
Yeah.
Wait for the next projectile to land, and then hurry across. But when you've got, like, combat engineers or knights, they're just marching along like ignorant lemmings. That's what we call foreshadowing. That is foreshadowing.
Yes.
In the professional podcasting industry. They're just marching along, and whether or not they get domed by a sling bullet is almost entirely random, unless you were able to overcome the controls and all the demands in your attention to micromanage everybody in the field, which is borderline impossible.
Yep.
Like, I'm sure some people are able to do it, but that is not how the game is intended to be played.
Yeah.
And so consequently, what I felt like I was just doing was just clogging the field with dudes and hoping they would get through. There was one particularly obnoxious part, though, in one of the tutorial levels. It was purely random, where the cadence of my being able to deploy dudes exactly matched the cadence of the slingshots. And they all died, one after another. It was almost comic in terms of how tragic it was.
Oh, boy. Yeah, King Arthur's world. I had one, I think it was the Knights tutorial level, where I eventually realized, like, oh, these guys are all just going to keep coming. All right, I'm just going to summon a bunch of knights, and Arthur and everybody's going to walk left until I hopefully win. And like you said, just clogging the field, hoping that that works out. And that's not particularly fun. I was thinking a lot in this last week that King Arthur's world, I'm not saying it would have been fun, but it would have at least worked on a computer with a mouse and a keyboard.
Yes.
It feels designed for that. And in fact, you apparently can use the Super Nintendo mouse, which I don't have, so I didn't use it. I don't know if that improves things at all, honestly, but it just doesn't make sense on a controller. The controls are so bad. Oh, and my favorite moment with the controls / Lemmings was I walked all my archers. This is the very first level, by the way. I walked all of my archers up to a pit where there's these little bridges that are just on a cadence. They're like dropping down or coming back up. So I line them all up, and then I am about to get them to start moving because I know that the bridge is going to come back up in just a moment. And when I do that, some of the archers, for some reason, sorry. I told them to go right. But a bunch of the archers in my group, for some reason, took 2 steps to the left first, which meant they walked into the open pit. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. They waltz around for no effing reason. It's so strange.
It's like, okay, I didn't realize that I need like 30 pixels of safe space around you.
Yeah. I would have been willing to forgive some of this in terms of the control scheme if King Arthur's World had been the pack-in game for the Super Nintendo mouse, right? Because at that point, it's like, oh, it doesn't work with a controller. It's like, yeah, it's not supposed to work with a controller, really. Yeah. That I'd give it a pass for. Like, you can't play Super Scope games without the Super Scope.
Yeah.
Fine. But, oh, geez, King Arthur's World. And again, even then, as you say, as far as 2D real-time strategy games go, it just seems the level of strategery involved is, am I going to be flooding the zone with enough man meat? And are they going to randomly show up at the right time to be able to do the thing they're supposed to do? It's utterly bizarre.
Yeah.
Partially because when and how they act on their own is so strange and obtuse. You don't really give them commands. Most of the time you're just telling them to stop what they're doing. And then sometimes, again, seemingly at random, they therefore decide, oh, okay, time to go home. And then they just start marching right all the way back to the initial camp. It's like, guys, I need you to do the thing. Which they go tell them to stop.
Yeah, it's strange because as far as I could tell, and I could be wrong because I didn't have a manual to read, but as far as I could tell, there wasn't necessarily any indication when using an ability. Well, first of all, you don't know what any of them do. Some of them, like the archers, you can tell based on the icon what that move is going to do. Others, it's like the wizard, lightning. Okay, what does lightning mean? Lightning apparently means lightning bolts are going to fall all over the screen, like the entire screen that you're on. Great. Wish I knew that. Very unclear what anything's doing. Oh my god, I got so fired up about that, I completely forgot what my original point was. But
wouldn't you say instead you were shocked?
Yes, I was shocked.
I assure you, the manual is not particularly illuminating on the scope either. Like, the section on what wizards do is more or less, they have magical spells. And like, okay, fine.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
There's no indication, as far as I could tell, whether when you use something, that unit is going to leave, or if they're going to be able to stick around. That's really important.
It is. It's very important. The reason why I brought up Lemmings, it's like, okay, look, real-time strategy on the Super Nintendo, obviously it's not going to be able to pull off Command and Conquer. I mean, Command and Conquer hadn't even been released yet, right? This is still the era of like Dune 2 and the very, very early modern real-time strategy games. But I decided to look it up. The Super Nintendo version of Lemmings was released in 1992. And I thought, oh, okay, well, is it technically proficient? Is the control scheme okay? And does Lemmings hold up?
Yeah.
Based on my memory of it being A, charming, and B, interesting in terms of gameplay. So I loaded it up. It has not aged a day. The graphics are fluid. The map gives you a very excellent sense about what's going on. The pacing is downright perfect. The control scheme is very straightforward.
Thanks, Lemmings.
So it can be done, and it can be done on the Super Nintendo. So King Arthur's World has 0 excuses left. We've ran out all the excuses. Ain't got a leg to stand on.
Yep, I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Child Caitlin doesn't always have the best taste.
Well, Child Caitlin introduced me to a number of very interesting things. Let's not misinterpret what I just said. So I'm willing to give you a pass on this one, but King Arthur's World is an absolute stinker.
It really is.
They redesigned it for mobile, Caitlin, in 2018.
They did?
Yeah. I don't know if it's still available at any of the stores. I just saw it on the Wikipedia page. I'm like, oh, dear
I had no
Lord,
idea.
no.
That's incredible.
Go play Lemmings again. It's still good.
I should do that. I should definitely do that.
Lemmings is great. I mean, and the ports were... I'm not going to stand by all of them.
Yeah.
But the Super Nintendo port is solid.
That legitimately makes me want to play Lemmings again. I tried... The last time I played Lemmings was on a mobile version. And it, like...
Sure.
Mobile games are sometimes designed poorly in order to extract money from you.
Yeah, I can't imagine that trying to interact with a touch screen with your finger trying to tap an individual lemming is a good time.
Yeah, probably not. Okay, with that, we're going to take a break for some ads, and we'll be right back. And we're back. We are going to be discussing NieR Automata. Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Originally published in 2017 by Square Enix, it was developed by PlatinumGames, another one of those niche studios that churns out highly regarded games of sometimes dubious sensibilities. And this has a strange sort of timeline. It is kind of sort of a spin-off of the RPG NieR, which itself is kind of sort of a spin-off of an RPG called Drakengard. But the thing is that when I say kind of sort of, those are doing a lot of work, because these games don't have much to do with each other at all.
No.
There are certain visual touchstones that recur, largely because of the weirdos involved, and they just like them. It's one of those things like, why is that element of the game? It's like, oh, I really like that element. It's kind of like when you read up on the making of FLCL, which is an absurd anime with a whole bunch of things that thrown in together that don't make any sense. And you wonder, why did it occur that way? And it turns out it's just because the director really liked those things. It's like, oh, he really likes Vespa's Rickenbacker bass guitars and the band The Pillows. That's why those things are in the show. Okay, fine. That's kind of an explanation. At the same time, it's no explanation. And sure enough, that is kind of the connective tissue between Drakengard, NieR, and NieR Automata. Anyway, NieR Automata starts with a strike mission of some androids who are here to kill some machines. So, androids are not machines in this universe, you have to understand.
Yes.
We're told that the androids were made by humans who are currently living on the moon, perhaps to escape capitalism with Tim Curry, but in response to the fact that aliens invaded and made machines. So here's the deal. Humans made androids to fight the machines made by aliens.
Yes.
So aliens and humans are engaged in a weird proxy war with their synthetic agents. All right, cool. This leads to an ever-escalating series of set pieces, more on that later, and that ends the prelude, and then we get into what we would call a far more standard JRPG kind of structure, where you are sent in a large open area with a whole bunch of mooks that you can murder for experience points, and you're told to go deliver this widget to this other person, and the other person gives you a doohickey that you're supposed to run back to the person who gave you the widget, and then after you do that 3 times, then someone says, oh, BT dubs, we're going to unlock fast travel for you now, and I say, couldn't you have done that 30 minutes ago, you unrelenting masochist freaks? And why am I wearing what I'm wearing? That's NieR Automata.
Yeah, I think that's it. So we'll just...
Have I captured the vibe?
Yeah, let's just move on to Shout now.
Honestly, I didn't intend it to shake out this way. I'm pretty pleased with my summary. A game that resists classification in a whole bunch of ways. I'm pretty proud.
It was good.
So what piece would you like to tease apart first, Caitlin?
I guess first I'll just talk a little bit about kind of my intro to NieR. So I played Drakengard. I did not play NieR, or the old NieR.
Yep.
And then, but I'd heard nothing but good things about NieR Automata for a million years, and so I finally decided to get it, and for some reason I decided to get it on the Nintendo Switch. So I played about 8 hours of it 3 years ago. I recall almost nothing of any of this, by the way. And I had to stop because I was playing on the Switch in handheld mode, and I don't recommend that at all. Because the screen is so small, and so many of the fights are, like, super zoomed out, so you can see all the different enemies around you, and I could not see my character 2B at all. It was terrible. So anyway, I played still on the Switch yesterday because I already bought it, so might as well. But I played on my TV. Much better experience, by the way.
Apparently, the PC port initially was plagued by a whole bunch of technical problems.
Okay.
And they were only fixed years after the release.
Really?
But suffice to say that NieR Automata has been ported to a number of different environments. And generally speaking, these things are fraught. But if you want to play it in modern context, you're pretty much stuck with the Switch or PC.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk a little bit about how about we talk about the prelude, the intro?
Please. The prelude is one of my favorite topics.
It was... I really liked how they introduced everything. I mean, the fights... Anybody who's watching this on YouTube gets to see me figuring out how to fight and how to do things. It was real sad. I think they start you with like 30 healing items, and I think by the end of it, I had 5. The fighting is interesting. It's... So, okay, first you start in the vehicles, which was cool. Apparently, no one else on your team knows how to dodge, which is like, how'd you guys even graduate from Android school? It's funny because my first experience with NieR was actually with the Final Fantasy XIV raid, which I think was in Shadowbringers, which was 2 expansions ago. But there's a whole thing where you turn into like these little... I forget what they call them. Anyway, they're like little triangles. All the characters in the raid turn into these little triangles at one point during a fight. And you can shoot either white or black circles. And the white ones can only damage the black enemies, and the black ones can only damage the white enemies. And I was seeing a little bit of that in the very beginning of the prelude, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. But anyway, eventually you land, and then 2B... you don't land. You crash, and 2B perfectly exits her completely destroyed flyer and is fine, apparently. And wearing this very...
Okay, in defense of the creator...
Yeah.
The creator, I read a quote of his out of context, but it made sense. He commented that very frequently in fantasy or science fiction stories, the protagonists or even armies are wearing like random outfits from like random vibes or fashion senses or whatever. And he says, why not a gothic Lolita main character? And I'm like, sure, that part's fine. But that only gets you so far, all right? It doesn't get you to the open back, the boob window, the thigh highs, the weird stockings, the visible panties, the skirt that's too short, the skirt that's barely there. I'll be generous. I'll be generous, perverts on the internet. Pick 2. You can pick any 2 elements of those that I've listed, and I'll be fine. And I won't even say anything about it.
Yeah. But all of them together really paints a picture. Yeah.
Like, I'll even set aside the fact that humanity, when making fighting machines to retake their ancestral home planet to fight the aliens, they decided to make all of their combat agents super hot. Okay, fine, sure.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll give you that. That's a common sci-fi trope. It's a thing. It doesn't make sense, and it's kind of stupid and juvenile, but whatever. As I've said, I can get with stupid and juvenile on occasion.
I know. I can't set that aside, because I'm just imagining... Like, being this scientist, or being like, okay, I need to create an android to destroy the machines, and I'm going to spend an inordinate amount of time designing how sexy she looks. Like, come on. Really? Anyway, it's fine. It's fine. She's pretty.
We've entrusted the future of humanity to our finest robot scientist, Dr. Pervert, and his fashion designer friend.
Yeah, that's it. But anyway, so combat. See, you have this little pod that can shoot stuff for you, so that's cool. You also can dodge, and dodging feels very permissible. Like, if you spam it, you're pretty much not going to get hit. But then, while trying not to get hit, and while hopefully, I think, shooting things with your pod the entire time, you also need to be meleeing and paying attention to whether or not the machines do a little red flash, meaning they're about to attack. And I was very bad at it. Probably the whole time, but I felt like I improved over the course of the intro. So, okay, I did not have that much time to play. I don't know, do you eventually get other buttons you can hit during combat?
Not that I saw. I mean, you get new skills that you can have your pod do, and you can get new weapons and all the standard stuff. in terms of the stuff that you can equip, pretty much the only thing you can equip are these different chips. It's pretty thematic and cool. Chips occupy a number of different slots. They don't tutorialize this. They expect you to figure out, but it's fine. It's pretty straightforward. And the chips occupy a very number of slots and they let you do various things. Hilariously, and this is the kind of Easter egg that I actually found charming, there's an OS chip that occupies 2 slots and doesn't have any gameplay effect. And it says, this is the Android's co-programming. Removal of this typically means death. And if you unequip it, you die and it's a hard game over. I'm like, you know what? That's kind of cute. Hats off.
I really appreciated how thematic it was. How, you have to upload your data. And if you don't upload your data when you die, you're not going to remember anything, meaning you're not going to have your experience and stuff. I enjoyed that the prelude ends with you and 9S, tapping the black boxes into each other, causing some kind of reaction that does a huge explosion. Like, I thought that was, pretty touching in a way. Like, even though their deaths aren't permanent, it was still, it had a little bit of weight to it, which I liked.
So, overall, we're kind of interweaving all these things together. Yeah. I think the sort of the prelude is arguably some of the best game design I've seen in a long time.
Yeah,
I think the
really
prelude
good.
is brilliant. Mm-hmm. It is swapping back and forth across genres. It is tutorializing with a very light hand, but nonetheless very effectively. It is giving you very visually impressive set pieces. It's introducing the world. It's doing all the standard things. It's playing with camera angles in a wild and very successful way. It has transforming robots, which frankly nobody warned me for. And I was very enthusiastic about it. It's got bullet hell elements, it's got shmup elements, it's got an RPG element, it's got hack and slash elements. It's wildly amazing. And it even has a bit of a touching interpersonal moment with some of the characters. And it's poignant because, and this is only a spoiler for the prelude, only 2B has her memory backed up. She remembers what happens in the prelude, and you meet up with 9S, and 9S shrugs and says, I guess the previous version of me didn't have time to upload my memories. I have no recollection of what happened there. And then 2B is like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, she responds to this. The game seems so intent in NieR Automata to make the rest of the game use as little of these amazing things as possible. It's just so aggressive to be like, it is time for me to slam the brakes so hard and never be nearly as good as I was during that first hour. It's bizarre because what happens is 2B is like, she reacts like that. This is deeply unsettling in a variety of ways.
Yeah. And
she responds to this for the rest of the game being just generally rude and distant to 9S. 9S is like, hey, could we be friendly? Call me Nines. That's my nickname. That's what my friends call me. She's like, no. Now, could they have tried to explore this? Like, this is a self-defense mechanism because she doesn't want to get too close in case he dies again? I mean, maybe, but that's not something they touch on. That would be, it's not even subtext. It's not really alluded to very well.
Yeah.
The game introduces these elements and then doesn't want to explore them. Like how everyone in the universe is convinced that the machines are not sapient. Despite the fact that they speak contextually in proper English to the characters, they have their own villages, some of them engage in philosophy and commerce, and they're able to explain why they do what they do and their interpersonal relationships. And the entire time, 9S and the rest of your command structure is like, oh, clearly they're not actually rational. I'm like, oh, so you're not... This isn't interesting. This is just blunt and silly. And I got increasingly angry that the game was refusing to give me what I know it can do.
Mm-hmm. I can only guess/hope that eventually NieR does get back there. And I say that because I can't imagine... Well, okay, I guess I could completely imagine that it would still get all the accolades that it does, even if it didn't do that. But I would like to believe, I guess, that it gets back there. Because the beginning was so good.
And it was so good.
And then it feels like so much of that just gets pulled away. And I don't know if it eventually starts to come back or not.
You're dumped in a kind of grasslands area where most of the time you're traipsing from point A to point B and you're killing mooks. And I thought, okay, maybe they're just pacing themselves. Then I'm dumped into the desert where mostly you're traipsing from point A to point B and killing mooks. Mm-hmm. And I'm noticing a pattern here. You go back to the grasslands area where nothing has changed. I'm like, come on, guys. You then go to the forest area where nothing has changed. And you go from point A to point B killing mooks. I'm like, and that's where I'm situated. Like, I
Yep.
don't.
Like, come on, NieR, you're losing me.
The combat is fine most of the time. During the set pieces, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And they occasionally give you another set piece. But the thing is that there was the next time you get introduced to your flight suit, for example, which remain awesome. I love the design of those. I love me robots. And you're told that you're going to have to go fight a massive enemy that you kind of only glimpse through some dust of the destruction it's causing. I'm like, yeah. And you get closer, it's the same Titan again. It's the same dude. In the Prelude,
No, we did
the
that
dudes
already.
were super cool. We did that already. In the Prelude, the dudes were like a huge factory coming to life. It's like, oh, the enemies weren't in the factory. The enemy is the factory. Oh no! It was kind of clever. It was cool. No. That's just what their huge enemies look like. So there's less reason for it. It's less contextual. It undermines the coolness of the Prelude by reusing the idea, and it's something we've seen before. And the flight suit thing, the second time you go around, it's not as protracted or as interesting. You're on the flight suit, then you're not on the flight. Oh, whatever, fine. But the Prelude is so good.
Oh.
I get the impression that things get more interesting thematically and narratively on everyone's favorite bugbear, replays. Because you're expected to play through the game multiple times every time it changes.
Oh, it's one of those, like, Drakengard, honestly. Okay.
Yeah. They pull the same trick in their previous games as well. Like, you're supposed to... Apparently, NieR, the first NieR, is really kind of just derivative and nothing until you play it, like, 5 times and then things get really super cool or something. I don't know. That's what the fans say. But you can't trust them. This is like... Season 1 is painful, but you have to watch it on steroids. Because you can pull that crap in video games... But you gotta make the runs tight. Like, not just because I've got limited amounts of time to devote, but it's a huge question of pacing issues. I'm not gonna get to the super interesting 30th hour if the first 10 hours are dull. You can't expect me to power through all of this in the hopes that you got more up your sleeve. Like, this, if anything, is the combination of both. You put all your cards out on the table, figuratively speaking. You show me this great prelude, and then you send me towards Fetch Questville, which is this endless morass.
Yeah.
And then I've got some fanboys yammering in my ear telling me that, oh, once you get to the 3rd playthrough, things get super illuminating and revealing. It's like, great. That's great for you. I'm glad you're living your best NieR Automata life. Can I play something that's fun all the time now?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. So you saying that reminded me, like, okay, yes, I had heard that before, but I had more patience for that back in the day. Like, I did play Drakengard 800 times, and I got all the endings, and most of them were bad, but it was okay, you know?
When time was ample and good games were few.
Yes.
We talk a lot about this in the context of hobbyist board games, right? Because back in the 80s, when there weren't a whole lot of things, you know, and your average game lasted 4 to 5 hours and was riddled with problems, it's like, yeah, you're willing to forgive it then. Yeah. Time's moved on. I'm sorry. And I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe things get really good near the tail end of your first playthrough.
Yeah.
I literally have no idea how long a single playthrough takes. But I'm 10 hours into this sucker. And mostly it's off the fumes of the really, really great stuff that I saw in the prelude.
Yeah. How long to beat guesses, like, on the low end of 20-something hours?
And is that one playthrough, or I assume it's one playthrough? I think
that's a single playthrough. I guess I don't know for sure. I
don't know.
But yeah.
I don't know if I can, Caitlin. I don't know if I have it in me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I probably wouldn't have bounced off of NieR despite, like, the tiny screen issue where I couldn't see what the heck was going on if the game continued to be as good as it did from, you know, the prelude.
If they just condensed everything, keep the multiple playthroughs or not, make it a 6-hour game.
Yeah.
Give me, like... If it had been the prelude and even like 75% as good as the prelude for the remainder of those 5 hours, if it had been as good as the prelude for a solid 6 hours, I'd be screaming about how this was the game of the decade, maybe. I'm serious. It's that good.
Yep.
Like, with the constant level of innovation, of mixing things up, of like, oh, the camera's doing some interesting things, it's accommodating different play styles, whatever, but the amount of time that you spend in relatively open environments running around and just killing average mooks. The combat system is okay, but it's not good enough to keep that going. You can pull that kind of crap in God Hand. Some of my favorite moments in God Hand are just, here's an open area and some enemies.
Yeah.
Go to town. And the combat engine in NieR Automata is okay, but not that good.
Yeah.
And now I'm sad.
Yep. Me too.
And you know what the tragedy? I don't know. I may go back to it. I'm not sure. I just...
It's something that I've been meaning to play for the longest time, and I desperately want to know what everyone else knows who's already played about NieR. I really want to do it. I just have to not want to play something else more.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess with that, we can move on to shameless hyping of upcoming titles, our segment that we call Shout. Mark, what would you like to shout out today?
The Persona 4 remaster, Caitlin.
Ooh.
Long rumored, finally confirmed. Unlike the Oblivion remaster, long rumored, finally confirmed. The confirmation does not take the form of, oh yeah, we've been working on it, you'll be playing it in 3 days. This takes the form of, yeah, we finally started working on it, you'll have it maybe by the end of the year next year.
Okay.
So, it is a ways off. But I am always hungry for more Persona stuff. Persona 4, as I've said before, is my least favorite of the modern Persona games. I'm in the minority on that. A lot of people really, really love Persona 4. The theme of the game is about traveling into a television to solve murders.
Okay.
Which, admittedly, the weirdness of that... I mean, all the Persona games are super weird, but, like, Persona 5 was about brainwashing people to stop being jerks. Persona 3...
Okay.
was about coming to terms with the end of the world and nothingness. Persona 4 is about stopping a murderer who murders people by taking people into a mystical television. And so you go into the television. Anyway, but setting all that aside, I love Persona. Even when Persona is embarrassing, I love Persona. And I'm looking forward to the Persona 4 remaster.
Amazing. Someday, Mark, I will play a Persona game. It'll happen.
Persona 3 Reload is on Game Pass.
Yeah.
Persona 5 Royal is on sale right now on Steam.
Yep, I need to do it. It's going to be great.
I mean, you don't need to, but
well, I'm just
surprised that as somebody whose enthusiasm for JRPGs is roughly 735,000 times as potent as my own, I'm the one who has played the Persona games several times and you have played none of them.
I know, it doesn't make any sense.
What would you like to shout out, Caitlin?
So, you mentioned just earlier today, it was foreshadowing, but you didn't know it, that you don't like to play dogs as much as I do. And I'm going to be shouting out Haunted Paws. It is... So, I read the description on Steam, and I just about died. So the description is, quote, a cozy co-op horror game where you play... I know, I'm not sure I understand cozy and horror game in the same... But that's fine.
As we've commented before, we talked a little bit about this last week. I'm not sure that the word cozy means anything anymore.
Definitely not. You play as 2 puppies trying to rescue their human friend in a haunted mansion.
Sounds great.
I can't wait.
Sounds right up your alley.
Yes, definitely. So that's going to do it for another episode of All My Best Friends Are Digital. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. If you'd like to support us in the free media, you can check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/amfad. And you can also check out our video episodes on YouTube every week. Thanks everybody and have a great week and we'll see you next time.
Take care everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us at allmybestfriendsaredigital@gmail.com. Hope to see you again soon.